Greetings, everyone. Bladen, Breitreiter, Incident Meteorologist, here with Cameo to give you a weather update for the Calf Canyon fire for Thursday, August 11th. So, still monsoon season. So it's still all about that high pressure. So just for your orientation here, this is kind of a strange crop, but here's New Mexico and Colorado. We're about here-ish. And our high pressure system is finally starting to take its trip from just above the Four Corners where it was yesterday and start to tour the central portion of Colorado as we go through the day today. Now, this is our simple water vapor imagery, and if you'll remember, it allows us to see water vapor at several different layers of the atmosphere. So we're looking at the low levels, the mid levels, and the upper levels, and it does so by showing that via different colors. So this region out here that kind of looks like the depth of space, that's all black, this is dry at all levels. And then as we get a little bit further west out here, we see some pinks. Those are clouds at the mid-levels. We see some turquoise colors here. That's going to be moisture at all levels. But as we get a little bit closer back into our neck of the woods here, it might be hard to see, but there's actually a bit of green here that stretches here from southern Colorado in and across the southern Sangre de Cristo Mountains here and across the northeast highlands. And what this signifies is that there's moisture at the upper levels, but it is dry below. So as our high pressure system tours central Colorado today, it's going to slowly try to make its way east as we go into tomorrow and over the weekend. And so what you can imagine is a lot of this right here, we're going to see a lot of dry air intrusion as we go into the latter portion of the week into the weekend. And what that's going to do is really start to shut off some of our storm chances. So as you can see here, we got this sort of motion here, and that's all going to be drying out. Now, keep in mind, that's the atmosphere. It's still super saturated and soggy down in the soils, and that can still, especially as we get into the afternoon hours, we get access to those thermals and the heat, that can actually get that moisture up into the atmosphere, and we can see development from that. So even though it's looking like it's dry out here, we can still see some modest development by moisture recycling, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today. So as we go into the day today, we're expecting those storms to initiate in and around between 1100 and 1300, which is 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. today. And they're going to favor the high terrain, but also going to try to form out here across the highlands. So we'll see a little bit of a mixed bag as to where these storms initiate today. But as far as our coverage goes, we're looking at a pretty decent reduction from yesterday. So trending a bit more isolated as we go through the afternoon hours. Now, this high pressure, like I said, is going to start to, you can see its center here. That's like where the swirl is kind of hanging out. That's really evidence of the subsidence or the sinking air, which also dries the air. That's very evident here. We're going to see that push this way. And so we'll start to see that drier intrusion even as early as this afternoon. And because of that, it might actually shut off our storms a bit earlier than what we've seen the last several days. Now, caveat to this, I did say isolated storms. So a reduction in coverage does not mean an improvement necessarily in safety. So what I mean by that is these are very, very localized bouts of rainfall. It is nearly impossible for models to be able to resolve thunderstorm cells at that pinpoint, right? So they can't necessarily figure out if something is going to form right over here or right over here. They don't have that resolution. So that means that we don't necessarily know, nor can we predict that a certain area is going to see flash flooding. But what we can do is kind of get a blanket idea of whether or not we're at risk for that, and that's what those flash flood watches are for. Now, we actually don't have one today. The National Weather Service in Albuquerque did not hoist a flash flood watch for the burn scar today. In fact, that's the first time in a while that we've seen that. But that said, do remain prepared. Do be sure to stay weather aware as we go through the day to day, because the threat of flash flooding is always going to be present out here in monsoon season. So the other thing to consider too is that a lot of these storms that form anywhere in this area are also going to be capable of lightning. Just because a storm forms over in Mora doesn't mean that someone in Sapeo doesn't see impacts. And what I'm talking about with lightning is a phenomenon called bolt from the blue. So it literally means that lightning is being discharged out of its parent thunderstorm and going to the ground, and that can be at a distance as great as 25 or more miles. So you might think, oh, Mora's getting, a decent thunderstorm right now. I'm down in Sapeo. I can go, work on the yard. It's a very risky thing to do. The lightning can still strike you out there. If you find yourself out in open range land, you're the tallest thing. The best thing to do when you're out there during a lightning storm is to make sure to kind of close the gap between you and the ground. Lightning actually doesn't have temperature, which is kind of crazy. Lightning instead heats up anything that it's around. So it'll heat up the air up to about 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than the surface of the sun. Nobody wants that. But it can also heat up your body. So the best thing to do is to crouch as low to the ground as you can, basically close that distance, get to your lowest potential energy so that if lightning does strike you, it doesn't have very far to travel to get to the ground, which is the only place that it wants to be. It just wants to, get to the ground, be done with itself. Hopefully it's not through you. So reduction in storm coverage today. Sounds like great news. It definitely is. We need the break, and we're luckily going to see that as we go into the weekend. It's actually going to trend a bit lower every day, but don't let that catch you off guard. One cell in the wrong place can still cause flash flooding. Remember all the things about floodwaters that can happen to you. Don't cross flooded roadways. Turn around. Don't drown. When it comes to lightning, don't go outside when thunder roars, stay indoors, or see a flash, dash inside, because lightning can travel many, many, many miles to come visit you, and that's not the visitor that you want to have when you're planting your garden. So please, please be safe out there, and I will see you again soon.